When Women Speak.
And New Jersey Poetry Events presents
When People Speak.
Poetry and conversation with pop-up poetry guests. Your hosts will be Amira, Shabazz, Bilal.
And your co-host, James C. Ellerby.
All right. We are here for our 14th When People Speak. And we're going to have a special show for you. We have a dynamic roster of pop-up poets. And we also going to be broadcasting live on the scene in downtown Newark with the festivities going on in downtown Newark with Queen's show as well. And we might have a poet or two pop up from that event as well. But we're live on the scene downtown in the Row. They're having a show right there in downtown Newark. I was waiting for my co-host to come back on. I'll wait for her to come back on. But they're downtown at the Row in downtown Newark. But we're going to start this show off. And first, I have a phenomenal poet that goes by the name of Christopher Bogart. And I want to give this man his flowers before he comes to the stage, and I bring him up and come to share a few words with our people for When People Speak. But Christopher Bogart is the founder of Jersey Shore Poets, a group of working poets who meet once a month to write, critique, and publish. His poetry has been published in various literary magazines throughout the country. His chapbook about the Yuma 14, titled 14, Anthologia del Sonoran, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can correct me once you come on. Was awarded third place in the Poetry Box Chapbook Contest and was published in October of 2018 by the Poetry Box and nominated for the Pushcart Prize for his poem Abraham Morals Hernandez. The Poetry Box was published. The Poetry Box also published his chapbook Breaking Point, about America in the era of Donald Trump, and a full book of poetry about the plight of Central American migrants. The Eater of Dreams, love that title. He's presently working on a novel tentatively titled The Beast for an MFA at Monmouth University, and translating the poetry Federico Garcia Lorca and Arthur Rimbaud into English. He has just finished a full book of poetry, This Conversation, that translates a conversation between two strangers at a bar about systematic racism in America. It will hopefully be released in the spring of 2022. No, thank you for gracing our stage. We heard all about you. We heard all the accolades. And now let's hear the words. So I'm going to come off the stage and let you give the audience a taste of what I just read. So this floor is all yours.
I wrote this book of poetry, This Conversation, to begin a dialogue about race with those with whom I share a skin color. White, obviously, unless your screen is dark. To share my own experiences, to instruct, hopefully to enlighten, and ultimately to convince those people and any and all others who need to hear what these poems are saying, that the America of the future has to be different from the America of the past, different even from the America of the present. While I use the paradigm As James said, of an accidental meeting between the narrator and a stranger at a bar, it is through this device that I encourage the reader to think about the problems inherent in systemic racism and to have this conversation with others. The book is divided into two forms of poetry: a seamless poetic dialogue between the two characters at a bar over 3 beers and about 2 hours. It's written in free verse, and there's a variety as well of traditional and as well as non-traditional poetry forms to further explain the points being made in the conversation. In his book Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, Emmanuel Acho, a former linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles, encourages white people to talk to each other, to have this very important conversation about the treatment of his black brothers and sisters. It's going to take courageous, informed, empathetic, committed white people, he says, to challenge their racial peers who rely on white talk. If your goal is to fight racism, then you'll have to do your part. I've written this book of poems to have this conversation, as Emmanuel Acho suggests, and to do my part. I'm going to read you 2 pieces. The first one is from one of the parts of the dialogue so you can hear what the conversation would be like at the bar. And the second one is one that James asked me to read. It's the last poem. Civil Discourse, First Skirmish. It was just an ordinary night at the bar that sat at the edge of our town. The white noise of conversation was punctuated by the clinking of glasses and the dull thud of bottled beers being dropped onto cardboard mats. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Excuse me," a voice said as he pulled up the stool. "Is anybody sitting here?" "There is now," I replied. He sat down by my side and signaled the bartender for a beer. I went back to watching the overhead screen and the demonstrators marching to seek justice for the death of George Floyd. The bartender came over and asked, "What'll you have?" The man on the stool, his eyes glued to the screen, pointed to my bottle of beer. Within a fast minute, the bartender returned and placed the cold beer on the mat. The man on the stool raised his beer to his lips, took a sip, and then spoke to the screen without turning to me. "What do you think about what's going on in the streets of America these days?" "What do you think?" I asked him. He sat for a moment in silent reflection, his cold beer clasped firm in his hand. "Why are you answering my question with a question?" He took a long hit of his beer. "Do you really need to know what I think?" I asked him. "Don't you know what the answer should be?" "Easy, buddy. I'm just trying to make conversation." He paused, then took another hit. "Okay," he stated when I failed to reply. "I don't get their beef, and I don't know what that beef has to do with me." "Couldn't say," I responded. "I'm just drinking my beer." "But maybe your use of they is a dead giveaway? Don't you think that word might be the problem here?" "Well, aren't they as opposed to us?" He pointed the neck of his beer towards the screen. "Well," I replied, "I thought we were both on the same side. I thought that us was really just we." "You know what I mean," he replied in frustration. "I mean that you and I are both of the same race, so it's really just us that's we." "I know what you mean." I took a sip of my beer. "But look at that screen. There's black and there's white, marching together in the same common cause. Don't you think that they think of themselves as we?" "But they're not all white," he quickly insisted. "Not like you and like me." "And how does that matter? They both have 2 arms, 2 legs, have a mother and a father, and a heart that beats with the same red blood as we." "Yeah, I know, but..." "Or are you saying they're not human? Is that what you believe?" "No," he answered quickly, and then paused for a moment. "I guess I just look at them as different from me." "Why?" I asked. "I guess that's just the way I was taught." "I get that," I replied. "And in a way, so was I. But maybe we're overdue to learn something new. Something just a little less judgmentally fraught. Something different from what we once thought was so true." For once we were once so very carefully taught. That's the first part of the conversation. And the second and the last piece that I'm reading is called This Conversation, Who? The book begins with this conversation when, and it refers to President John Fitzgerald Kennedy's remark, if not now when, and if not me, who? Here's the poem. This conversation you're hearing here today, this conversation that you've heard here today is the same conversation that must not go away. When the last demonstrator packs his sign up and leaves to go home to his family, till the next black family grieves over the next black life lost on the streets of our cities, this conversation must be the cost. No, this conversation cannot cease to exist, because what caused this conversation is still in our midst, in our thoughts, in our attitudes, in our choices of friends. And while this hatred still has a home here, this conversation must never end. No, this conversation must continue for as long as it takes, for every single person in the whole human race to accept as truth what we all need to believe, that all men and women are equal, regardless of race, color, or creed, regardless of gender or orientation, that all them is us, and that all us is we. Until we can comfortably live in each other's skin, that we are all the same family, that all of us are kin. When the day finally comes that each feels empathy so deep within him or herself, then and only then can we put this conversation back upon the shelf. But until that day arrives, there's much more we have to do. So many conversations to start. And the one who needs to start them is you. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for doing your part and in this ongoing conversation that can't cease until we have closure, and then we can put it back on the shelf, as you said. Thank you for sharing that. What drove you to write this book, The Conversation? I know we talked in length about your book, and you gave me the honor of being a sensitivity reader for this project, and I truly believe it is a work that is bigger than you in a good way. I mentioned that before, but what drove you to write this particular book?
First of all, you gave me the honor of reading it. But one of the things I would say that drove me to writing this book is for the last 20, no, for the 25, the last 25 years I taught. I've been retired now for 12 years. I taught in a district, was one of the urban 33 districts in New Jersey, Long Branch. And there's about a third Black, a third Hispanic, and a third white, of which about a third of those are Portuguese and Brazilian. So I came in contact with hundreds and hundreds of students of color. And many of them I still consider to be friends to this day. They're in their, I hate to say this, but my oldest students are now turning 71. So I've been around for a bit. Before I wrote this book, I talked to a number of them, and I asked them for their experiences, and I asked them to talk to me honestly, and I asked them to give me advice. And I think I know kind of where you're going on this too. When I first retired, I was asked to mentor a 10-year-old boy, biracial boy, and I've since adopted him, and he lives here. He's working tonight, but I became a father of a black son, and for the first time began to understand what it was like not to be able to go to sleep until you know where he is and whether he's safe. And all throughout this book, I think James can tell you the whole thing that I've said is empathy. Um, until we have empathy, until we can share each other's skin, until we can understand the suffering that white supremacy is causing in this country, then as white people, we just don't understand what we're doing by remaining silent. Martin Luther King said, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say that counts the most. And that's a paraphrase. But I think that's extremely important. This is a passion of mine, and it's one that I hope um, will be able to be read and understood. I want this book to be a primer. I want people to read it and then say, I know a friend who could probably benefit from this. That's what I would like for it to happen. Again, I thank you very much, James. You've been a great friend and a fellow poet, and I appreciate what you did for me. Thank you.
Now, the honor is definitely mine. I just can't wait until the world can experience what I experienced. I truly believe this is the kind of work that saves lives. This is the kind of work that change minds and change perspectives. And I can't wait to see that unfold. So thank you for sharing the stage. Thank you for sharing your words and sharing your passion and sharing your mission, because it's very important. And that's the beautiful thing about poetry. In poetry, there's a responsibility that you have to the readers, to share those stories and those messages that will pretty much be put in a corner or put in a box and never be thought of again. But we are the storytellers. We are the information sharers of the world, and we have a responsibility to keep that going through the art of poetry. So I commend you, and definitely can't wait to get my copy in my hands and keep writing, keep sharing, and keep fighting for what's right, because there is no other way. It's either right or wrong. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And see you in the trenches. So that was Christopher Bogart. I'm telling you, when you get that book in your hands, it's just so powerful and so life changing. It changed my perspective on things too, as well. So I know it'll change yours. Promote your business live on When People Speak. Our promo videos are 35 seconds. They're ran for 3 shows, and it's a good way to grow your business. Support our platform at a low promotion fee. And remember, your business matters. And you can do that by emailing us at whenpeoplespeak@gmail.com. So support When People Speak. Be a sponsor. Be part of the family. We know you're enjoying the show so far, and this is how you can show your support of When People Speak. You can donate now at Cash App, $Amira Shabazz. So support the artist, support the platform. You are the ones that make this show possible. So continue to allow more impactful, inspiring shows by donating now.